Thank you, Dave, and yes, you did surprise me. After all these years, I'm surprised you can, but you did. And I'm going to take a minute here, too, to put in my 2 cents on this, because there was a time in my life, in 20 years of working in this industry, I hear everyone say, well, in my previous life, because it seems like everybody, or almost everybody, did something before they got into the printing industry. They did something else. So in my previous life, I did manage small businesses, and I managed a sales force. I managed scheduling. I managed a lot of the administrative duties that went into making those businesses successful. And the same thing that went into making those businesses successful, business principles are the same across the board. If you can't manage your sales, it doesn't matter how much you have in sales. I know a story of a it's not a story, I mean, we actually knew the printer, who fired his sales guy because his sales guy was making too much in commission. That's a problem. That's a real problem. If your salespeople are bringing in so much in sales and you're losing money because you're having to pay them too much in commission, that's a management problem. So yeah, I agree with you. It has to be management. And the other 2, though, are, I don't know, they're all important. It's all important, but if you can't manage it, it doesn't matter what type of technology you have or how much sales you have. Our next question for the panel is, the borders and outline of our industry are constantly changing. We have competition from areas that we never dreamed would be our competitors. 10 years ago, you never would have thought that a sign company might be competing with you. You never thought that an ad agency might be competing with you, or that you might be competing with them. So I want to ask you, where do you see the competition coming from for this industry segment? How can printers deal with that competition?
Let me take that. I think the biggest competition that I think has affected everybody, and it's been a little silent because it hasn't affected you dramatically, I think it's just the internet printers. I mean, when you look at a Vistaprint, and there's several others like that, and you look at the volume of transactions, I forget, it's like 40,000 orders a day or something like that. It's unbelievable. 58,000? Is that what it is? That's you know, when you think about 58,000, I mean, I used to do about 100, 125 orders a day. You know, so when you lose 2 or 3 orders a day, you really don't notice that. And I think that's what's been happening is everybody's been losing an order here and there, and I think that's been a real change that we just never had before. I mean, we always had. Another one was, you know, bring work going in-house. I mean, we all have stories of the customer buying the same piece of equipment we used to have, and that happens. It's going to continue to happen as long as we're ever in business. The other one is you're seeing, I'll call it the larger commercial printers, are getting into digital, and they're moving downstream, and they have to, because, you know, the longer runs. I mean, I remember going to a seminar I had to be 15, 20 years ago where they were talking about, you know, run lengths and how they were going down. Now, they're still continuing to go down to, they're not down to one-on-one at this point, but they will be getting closer and closer to that. And I think commercial printers are looking at how they can diversify and where they're going to go, and they're going to get in our backyard and compete against us. I think they're going to struggle a little bit with that for reasons of, you know, how do you pay a commission to somebody that does, you know, $200, $300, $400 jobs? But they're taking those on, and I know we have people in our peer groups that are what I would consider to be traditional commercial printers, and their biggest growth, quite frankly, is in the digital area.
Who wants to jump in?
I was, about 15 years ago, I was sitting in a hotel lobby in Palm Springs, California, with Paul Orfila and a bunch of other people drinking beer. Paul Orfila, the founder of Kinko's. And we were drinking beer, and you know how it gets, you have a couple of beers and things start to become clearer and clearer and clearer to you. And Orfila, who's very much a character, was talking about how great an opportunity Kinko's had in front of it. And one of the other people that was in that group said to him, they said, you look at the market, you look at the future. Is there anything that scares you? You know, obviously you're positive about a lot of things, but is there anything that scares you? And he thought for a moment, and then he said, there's two things that scare me: laser printers and Office Depot. Office Depot scared him because their strategy was pretty much low price. It was then, it is now, and that's pretty much the same level of competition that you face today from the internet printers. And there's always going to be somebody out there whose only semblance of a marketing plan is, let's offer really low prices and build volume that way. I think it's worth mentioning that Office Depot, Office Max, Staples, none of those guys put Kinko's out of business. None of those guys put you out of business. I don't think the internet printers are going to put you out of business, but they're going to eat up a lot of that low-end printing stuff, right? And then the other thing that scared him, laser printers, the point was that people were going to be able to do a lot of what they went to Kinko's for on their own desks with their own equipment. And the technology has changed so that they can do even more and more and more on their desktops. So you've got threats from people doing it themselves. You got threats from the internet printers. You probably got a bigger overall threat to your business from the migration from printed stuff to other forms of business communication. The good news, if there is any good news in the competitive picture, is that there's not a whole lot of people buying machines and opening up new businesses these days. There's not a lot of new printers opening up. There's competition, though, but there's always been some level of competition. I think the best thing that you can do is grow past your competition. And I guess we'll probably talk about that with some of the further questions.
Competition. I agree with Dave. I don't feel the online print providers are anyone's competition in this room, and I think you should be grateful for them every day that they're taking the little low-end projects that you really don't want to put your time and energy into in working with those people. They're low-margin projects. Vistaprint spends $40,000 a day on keywords with Google. That's a different realm. I would not worry about them if people go there. They will come back to you. They know who their market is that they target, and it's not the same people you should be targeting. I believe the competition you need to be looking out for is a new breed. It's a new breed of businesses who understand how to tie together print, technology, social media into one package so that when they go to a business, they call on them, they can help them put together entire campaigns so that they are helping and giving businesses ideas on how to grow their business. And they're very much solutions oriented, which is another phrase that's coming into our industry, but that is the competition. I see it already happening in our market and some of our clients. That's who they're losing business to. And I feel the other competition are your customers. I feel your customers are going to become competitors because they're going to hire people who can do some of the things that are being talked about as it relates to online marketing and social media. So I hope that you all educate yourselves first, because the first one there is usually the one to capture that market.
I think everyone has made a good point there. I want to speak to just one segment of competition, and that's as far as your customers being able to bring capabilities in-house. And that has always been the case. And how many of you old-timers remember when there was a push to offer fax services in your shop? And how long did that last before every one of your customers had their own fax machine? So, I mean, that kind of transition has been going on for a long, long time. So I'm not convinced that that is the major threat. I also agree that that the internet printers I think that they're doing what the Kinko's did and some other people did. They're taking away the low-end business, and so I don't know if they're necessarily the biggest competition. And so that's it.
And you know, speaking of faxes and this topic, color copies. Okay, do we remember the good old days of color copies and getting $3 $3 or more. Yes. What do we get today? What's the average? 37 cents, and that's at the high end. So again, but that's still a lucrative component of the business. And the reason it went down is because our customers are the same people who sell us our equipment are selling our clients those pieces of equipment, and they're doing it internally, but there's still opportunity for us.
Very good. And I'm going to go a little off the beaten track here and just ask, what is the most frustrating industry-related experience you've had recently? Oh, David, that's a knowing grin. Tell us.
It's a different. My answer comes from a different place maybe than anybody working in a print shop, but I think that selling printing successfully is really pretty simple. You know, there's a bunch of things that you do. You identify suspects, you get the name of the decision maker, you send out an introductory letter or email, you call to follow up, you ask them for an appointment. Most of them say no. Actually, most of them ignore you, but some of them say yes. So you go talk to some of them, and some of them ignore you, but some of them don't, and they end up buying from you. I don't think there's any magic to selling, but you got to work at it. And the most frustrating part of my business is when the people who hire me to help them sell don't do what I tell them they should do.
That's called job security, Dave.
Well, it's worth mentioning, and I know that some of you in the audience have heard me say this to you, but when an owner of a printing business calls me up for coaching, I always give them a disclaimer these days. I tell them that, you know, about 1 out of every 3 owners who hires me to coach them fires me within 4 to 6 weeks because they get tired of me nagging them to do what they're paying me to nag them to do. That's the most frustrating part of my job is talking with people who just won't go do it.
Well, and Mitch, I know that
Yeah.
you deal with peer groups.
Yeah, and I was going to say, what I wrote down is my most frustrating thing is we started up a new peer group a couple months ago, and when we were in the process of talking to people that were potential members, Mike and I would interview them, and we go through an interview process, and just hearing some of the sad stories of people and where their business was, where you know, a couple years ago, and how they didn't react to it. They kind of just sat still. And you know, we heard that story. Mike, how many times did we hear that story? A lot. And that was very, very frustrating personally, because some of these people I knew or had known, you know, I'd seen them at meetings like this, and it's a shame because just like what Dave said, I mean, you know, we work with people all the time, and we've had very good success because I'd say almost the majority of our members actually have had positive increases in sales over the last 2 years, at least flat or better, and some really good stories in a few individuals. But they're the ones that do listen to what we have to say, and we've had a few just exactly with what Dave just said. We just had one recently that we had put in a group, and the person decided, well, I'm not sure if this is what it is, because all of a sudden that person's now going to be accountable. And I find that to be amazing, because the number one reason I think people stay in our groups and stay with these processes, and probably stay with you, Dave, for periods of time, because I'm sure you have stories of people with you for years as well, is because he makes them accountable, and they like that, and they prosper, and actually they see after a period of time. It doesn't happen. You don't snap your fingers and you hire Dave or somebody else, and it just happens overnight that, you know, things are better immediately. Maybe psychologically they might be better immediately, but it takes months and months and months. I mean, what's the sales process now? 6 months? Maybe. I mean, I don't even know what it is. I've heard 3 to 12 months, but and if you're turning your business around in any other ways, it takes some time, and it starts with the business owner changing themselves and how they think about things. And quite frankly, we're people, and a lot of us just don't want to do it.
Tanya?
Well, it goes in line with what y'all are talking about, is that it's frustrating that I see printer after printer come up with excuses as to why their business isn't growing, instead of seizing opportunities that are all around them and helping them thrive in their company. And what really frustrates me is for this group of individuals, and of course coming from a franchise environment, Alpha Graphics, the leading franchises have extraordinary resources to understand market trends and positioning their franchise to be successful with those trends. You should follow their steps. They've done all the homework. You need to look at what they're doing. And it's frustrating to me that independent printers tend to resist that instead of saying, hey, if this franchise is doing that, they must know something, and I need to look at how I can move that direction, and rather than viewing them as a competitor. But take a look at what they've done, because they've put a lot of resources and investment into how to position themselves in the marketplace. And there are a lot of indicators for printers in general, and I feel like some blinders have been put on. Like, if I just don't look right now, this will pass and I'll be fine. And that is very frustrating to me, because that's not the case. You've got to get out there and do things differently, and it's frustrating.
Well, I think that one of the things that frustrates me, and has for a long time, I attend all of the franchise conventions every year. I have done for 20-some years. I attended NAQP, every one of the NAQP owners' conferences, and back when we used to have our other conference. And I've made a lot of friends, and I can walk into a room when I come to wherever I am, a Sir Speedy or Alpha Graphics or something, and I can walk in, and I know people there, because I've seen them time and time again. And what frustrates me is that the people who should be there aren't, because they're not taking advantage of the tools and the resources. And as Tanya said, there are tools and resources out there. We're in the resource business at Quick Printing. We provide information for the industry through people who actually know what they're talking about. And John Stewart makes I think it was Stewart, it could have been John Giles, said, I'm really glad that people don't do what we tell them to do, because if they did, we'd be out of business. But it is frustrating when you know that these tools are there. You know that John Stewart, he goes off every year about the people who don't take advantage of the studies that he does, don't participate in the studies they do, the financial ratio, all the different tools that are there. You have the people who provide the information, get the study, and some few others. But you know that there's literally thousands of people who could benefit from that particular tool who don't take advantage of it. And I hear the same thing from the heads of the franchise, that they have all these tools, these resources. They've done the research, they've done the development, and there's a segment of their franchisees who will not, even if you drag them kicking and screaming, take advantage of what's there and what's available to them. So that's been frustrating to me for many, many years.
All right, let's lighten it up a little bit. What is the most interesting, humorous, or enlightening thing that's happened to you industry related recently? Oh, the blank stares.
I did an on-site visit with one of my clients, a printer in Florida. This was about 9 or 10 months ago. And as it happened, I was there the day after the job from hell had been delivered. You all been there, right? And so our plan for the day changed. We were going to start with a breakfast meeting at 7:30. And when I got there, he said, we have been summoned to the office of the director of marketing, who wants to, chew me out, and I want you to come along with me. I said, okay, we were going to go out and make some sales calls. This is a version of the sales call. So as we're driving out there, I asked him to tell me the story. I actually knew some of the story. I'd lived through some of the job from hell with him. And I asked him, I said, okay, what's your objective for this meeting? It's the sort of question I ask before every sales call, every sales meeting. And he said, well, I just hope to survive, And he said, she's going to fire me. I know that she's going to fire me. She's going to yell at us. She's going to fire me. And I just, I want to get out of there without any physical harm. So then I said, okay, well, what's your plan for accomplishing that? And he looks at me and he says, I was kind of hoping that you would lead the meeting. I pay you. So what he said, I pay you a lot of money. This is where you're going to earn your money. And I said, you're sure about this? You're comfortable with this? Because you never know what I might do. So anyways, we get in there and we sit down, and the woman I sometimes use the word polite pleasantries to describe the beginning of a meeting. You know, how's the weather? Do you have any trouble getting here? Stuff like that. There was no polite pleasantries. But it was obvious that we were supposed to start talking because she was just standing there, you know, sitting there looking at us. So I said, well, we appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you about this, and I guess we come here thinking that you probably hate us right now. Is that an accurate description of the way you feel? And she said, yes, that's a pretty accurate description. So I said, yep, I understand, we understand, but see, the thing of it is that we kind of hate you too. And if you could picture the owner of the shop is sitting next to me, he goes like, and I held up my hands and I said, look, I'm not trying to be confrontational. I'm really not. We know that you have a story to tell us. You want to tell us what you think happened here. Please tell us your side of the story, but we just, you know, hope when we're done you'll listen to our side of the story. So she yelled at us for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. It probably felt like 15 to the owner. And then she wound down and I said something like, okay, yes, that's pretty accurate, but if we can wind it back to this point in, you know, her story, let me tell you how we think your guys helped this thing get off the rails. So I talked a little, and then she asked a question, and then she talked a little more, and then we talked, and we talked for another 5 or 10 minutes or so. The really funny part of the story, I think, or at least the punchline of the story, is I wonder if any of you could guess the last 2 words, almost the last 2 words she said to us before we left. Nope. No, although she did say thank you.
And we can't use the F word.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's what she said. One part of the last, 30 seconds of conversation. I had no idea I'm sorry. It was funny. It was probably funnier to hear about it than it was to actually be there, especially for the owner. But there's a moral to the story. And the moral of the story is don't be afraid of your customers. Not that day, but they're still a good customer.
Well, this is not necessarily recent, but for many, many years, I put out a fax newsletter for the industry. And I am no longer doing that because technology has kind of leapfrogged the fax thing. But back when this was going on and I was making a decent amount of money from it, I heard from a printer, I think it was down in Alabama somewhere, Louisiana, somewhere down that neck of the woods, absolutely irate that I was sending out a fax newsletter to the printing industry instead of having it printed and mailed. And I was taking bread out of the mouths of their children because I was not printing the newsletter and mailing the newsletter. I was using this nasty old fax. What I found amusing about the story is I heard about this, he sent me an email.
I took one of the words you had and you didn't use it before, was profound. At first I was trying to find something that was funny, and I really couldn't think of anything. It's not been a real funny year the last couple of years, so it's, I think most people have been serious. But one of the things that was profound is when I found out that Heidelberg's not going to be at Graph Expo. And I've been thinking about it, and to me, the value of these conferences, conventions, trade shows is having all your vendors there. And it's profound in many levels. Is it a signal to the industry? Is it a signal that they're in trouble? I mean, I don't know what the signal really is, and I haven't really thought it through or heard from other vendors out there. But I just thought that was really profound. And it was, in some ways, it is kind of funny that they're not here, because in ways, a lot of the people in this room probably are customers of theirs, and you look to see some of the vendors here. If they don't have the huge booths like they used to, you still look for some of those vendors. And it's an interesting time, and we'll see what settles out of this whole thing. But I look at it. I want these things to succeed and continue to go on, because I think either Bob or Dave said it, that you got to take advantage of the tools that are out there. And I think coming to places like this and continuing to learn. Some of it you can do through online technology and stuff like that, but I think being face-to-face and seeing stuff and getting out of your environment is so important. I used to do a lot of my business planning when I came to these meetings, and what I mean by that is I'd be sitting here at some seminars, putting notes down and that kind of stuff, but also looking at one of my goals and some of the things. I see some people shaking their heads that they do the same thing, and it was my time out of the office that I could get away from everything that would allow me the time to do that, which I wasn't taking as much time to do that as I should. So it's profound because I want to see these things continue, and I don't know if they can grow substantially back to where they were, but at least come out to something that's going to be meaningful for all of us in the industry. So I think we really need it.
Tanya?
Well, I can't tell my humorous story. So
I bet you can't.
yes. So interesting. What is really interesting to me is we work with thousands of printers, and there are individuals, a couple of you may be in this room, who with the proper equipment and fewer than 5 people are generating $2 and $3 million a year in revenue. That is absolutely, positively fascinating and interesting to me, that you have the ability to produce and sell and work less and make more, yet there are so many companies that are barely able to scrap by and make ends meet, even in these economic times. And I find that very interesting and would love to understand why.
Thank you. That is fairly profound. And we want to leave time for questions and conversation with the audience. So I'm going to ask you one last question and ask you if you would be very concise with this. If you could give one piece of advice to members of the industry, what would it be? Mitch?
Well, I wrote down diversify your business and sell more. I think that's really what you need to do. And it used to be, I grew my business by adding, at one point, color copies to it, high-speed copies, mailing, and those were, in those days, kind of easy to do. But I think that's what you need to do, is you have to diversify, whether it's into marketing or into variable print or whatever it happens to be, some kind of technology. I think that's what you need to do, and then sell the hell out of it.
Same answer, to express slightly differently. You only got 2 ways to grow. One is to gain new customers. The other is to sell more stuff to the people you've already got as customers. Do both and add to your product line and add to your capabilities and find more ways to let your customers, your current customers, show that they love you.
Take advantage of the tools that are available. And there are many, many tools available. There's internet resources. If you're in a franchise, there's those resources. Those of you who came over from NAQP, there are resources there. And I think that you have to take advantage of what's available.
Don't be afraid of change. If you don't understand what's going on around you in the way of technology or equipment, then surround yourself with people who do understand it. But don't let that deter you from growth and opportunity. Know what you know and know what you don't.